And all right, welcome back, everybody. Being here at 5:57. The next item on our agenda is the first quarter council retreat discussion for time lead agenda. So with this, let's see, thinking last year, I feel like we did February and March because we just were a little slower getting going and we didn't have anywhere to meet. I know January might be kind of tight for everyone to look at their calendars. So what I'm looking for is in general from council, January or February. Is January going to be too tight for most of you? I mean, because then I could maybe send out a few dates. We can send out like a survey and see what works for everyone. So is anyone feel like January is too soon? Yeah, okay. Okay.
I just won't be around much.
Oh, okay. Well, that's so maybe we're looking at early February possibly, and we'll go from there and see if we can find a date that works for everyone. I can also do this in the survey, but it's sort of easier here. I'm trying to think. We usually alternate because I know for some people weekends are easier, and then for other people weekdays are easier. So is there a strong feeling or opinion from anyone? If you're looking here now, I mean, do work days work better for you all, or would you prefer a weekend? I know there were those sort of prejudices in there. Yeah. Any day between 8 and 20. Okay, interesting. Corey, do you have a preference?
Weekend would be better.
Weekends better. And you don't care as long as it's between those. Got it. Do you have a preference, Rick?
No,
Either of you? No. Ron, do you have a preference on weekdays or weekends?
yeah, but I think really not time I can stay.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll probably shoot for a weekend if that's okay. I think this one is usually like a council business meeting, like figuring out who we're gonna assign for committees, and so that kind of leads me into what the agenda discussion here. What I have in my mind is, firstly, it's nice to try to get on some kind of schedule annually for training that council should have. We've floated around different ideas. We've talked about Robert's rules, or sometimes our attorney will do a special training for council. Also, our insurance company has come before and done that. And so, I mean, if you're fine with it, I could work with our city administrator and kind of figure out what we could get, I guess, for the date that we get together, because not everything may be available. Did you have other ideas or trainings you'd like to see? Or just leave it open and I'll let you know what we can find. Robert's rules, yeah, I think especially with a lot of new people, and honestly, it's so in depth that I like having a refresher as well, so that would be a good one to look at then. And then the other part, so I was thinking that maybe half the retreat would be some kind of training for council, and then the other part, one of the big ones on my mind is the committee discussion that I brought up late last year, and I know I need to talk with our city administrator a little more about that, about what do we do with our committees. I think we definitely still need to keep people assigned to them, but how do we want to structure those? Do they meet every month? Do they, all those questions? It'd be good. Maybe we could use the retreat to have a really in-depth discussion about our committees and how we want to utilize them. Are there other things that you would want to discuss? We're kind of limited, I don't want to get too overboard, but we might talk about procedures there too, depending on how far we get on them. I know we're just starting to see them on the agenda tonight, but so maybe committees and procedures, does that sound good in terms of what we could hash out?
Yeah, that sounds real good, especially with committees, and I think this is, we talked about this before, so I'm sure it'll be part of the exercise, but really what's expected out of committees, because I think different people have different thoughts on that, and some of us just aren't clear, so it'd be good to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think we really need a chunk of time to discuss that and figure out what we'd like to see from them, so. All right, did you have anything else?
No.
Oh. Oh, and Councilmember Supple, sorry, it's hard for me to see the screen sometimes. Did you have anything to add, or?
No, I don't. I'm good. Thank you.
Is that a no, I don't? Yeah, okay, all right, thank you. Okay, city administrator, did I miss anything, or is there anything you want to find out from us, or is that enough to kind of get going?
I think that's enough to get going. Can you all hear me so I don't have to use the number?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what I can do is put together some dates, contact, so that we have a group called Jurassic Parliament, what's the,
Yeah,
parliamentary or parliamentary, whatever the.
Yeah.
word is, who does training, so I can contact them. And then I can also talk to the city attorney about potential trainings that are coming up. Put together kind of a draft agenda with some draft dates, send it around for concurrence, if that works.
yeah, that sounds great. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to civility and trespass policy with city administrator McDonough.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the time putting this on the city council agenda for tonight and for consideration. When I came on to the city of Duvall and began talking to staff, one of the first things that a couple staff members asked of me was to address some of the issues I had in the workplace around members of the public coming and being, I think uncivil is probably one version of the word, but in some respects harassing to staff. And there are a couple of members of the local community that have a hard time maintaining appropriate boundaries when they come into City Hall in particularly, but also with our public works staff. We've had members of the public following our public works staff around the city, actually to the point of not being able to see their license plate behind them, and kind of for hours tailgating them to the city as they do their work. And so as part of being responsive to staff concerns, I took a look and researched various jurisdictions who had civility policies and who had trespass policies for city property. This draft policy that I have on the cow agenda for tonight is an amalgam of probably 4 or 5 jurisdictions that I found that have something similar. Also spoke to the city attorney. So before I started drafting the policy, I asked him, what is required to trespass someone or ban someone from our buildings? And he said, without a policy, you can't really do it. The other piece of it is I had experience from KCLS where we did bans and charges on a regular basis out of the libraries, and we had a systematic progression for how we would do that, which was warn, ban, trespass, and sometimes you kind of, on that continuum, you can have multiple warnings, you can have multiple bans, until you ultimately get to a trespass. So I put together this policy, I brought it to the Public Safety Committee for review and kind of brainstorming some of the ideas that are in this policy. And then I'm bringing it here tonight to show you as a draft, get some insight, feedback, consensus if this is something that the council would like to pursue. So that's the discussion for tonight. And then I'll be speaking to the city attorney after council review on how to go about adopting this through a council, either consent vote or ordinance vote.
Thank you, Mayor Chen. I just wanted to share with council that this is something we've been trying to find a legal way to address for 5 years now. So I'll just be very blunt, is that our staff has been harassed by some members of our community for years, and we have had no legal recourse to stop that harassment of staff. One of our prime responsibilities as an employer is to ensure that our employees are treated fairly and equally, and that they're not subjected to mean words, accusations, etc. So this seems to be escalating within our community. And really the need is to get something done quickly, I think is of the essence. As we all see, looking at the national news, things are happening in city halls every day. And we need to find ways that we can protect our staff, even if it's from email or someone trespassing or following our employees throughout the city.
Yeah, and I would say, this is designed to be a progression. So the first, interaction that would fall in line with harassment, stalking, or threats would be a warning with, handing the individual the policy. Next would be, a letter detailing potentially ban, a cease and desist letter. And ultimately, a civil trespass letter would be a final tool after a series of progressions, with the chief of police consent and an appeal process to ensure that we're protecting, the constitutional rights of those who, engage the city in business. So, written so that, it's not a over response the first time someone kind of interacts with the policy, but also to have appeal rights on the back end, if they do get to a place where it's a civil trespass, it still retains the rights for police to criminally trespass anyone who is, violating the criminal trespass law in our buildings around the city.
Councilmember Napoli?
Yeah, is there, email or anything that with the draft? Is that,
An email, well, it was in the council packet.
it was? Yeah, I haven't been able to review it.
The link isn't working.
There isn't, it's not even highlighted.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no link in the discussion section at all. I think that's.
Okay, well, we'll be sure after this meeting to get you all a draft of it.
I mean, I'm still interested in the policy, but yeah, I haven't been able to review what it would look like. So-
Yeah, no, we'll make sure that we get a draft out.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and one thing that we talked about in the public safety committee was, I think one of the things I asked was if somebody's whatever words you used, engaged with this policy or, you know, is received maybe a civil trespass. And then there's some kind of appeal process or a certain amount of time is asked. If they were to re-violate or do something again, is it an escalated or do they just repeat the same process again?
I can share with you how it was done at KCLS, because it's the one I have experience with. So if you were banned out of a building, it was usually escalating bans before you got to a trespass. So it would start with maybe a 1-day ban, it would go to a week ban, and then it would go to a month ban until you hit trespass. Similarly, civil trespass orders can be for any increment of time that would solve hopefully the problem. Typically, if you've been trespassed and say your first trespass was a week, if you get trespassed again, it would be for a month, you know, and in greater increments up to a year. Typically, you wouldn't trespass someone in a civil way beyond a year.
Go ahead, Councilmember Napoli.
Are you sure? Okay. I was just curious on this type of policy, if it's not on the property, like the example of someone following in a vehicle, how does the policy address something like that?
So the policy has a section on defining stalking, which would involve directed activity to a city employee that's not on city property.
Councilmember Isaacson?
Question asked directly, maybe from your experience, maybe the chief block. I mean, if you have a problem with an individual, you can put restraining orders on individuals as staff. I mean, that's a legal method that we have right now. Why would that not be already used? If someone comes in and harasses you or me or someone on staff, I could go and put a restraining order on that person, and that's legal right now. I mean, why would we do this instead of encouraging staff to pursue a restraining order?
So restraining orders are a slightly different procedure and have a criminal element to it. So this would keep individuals out of a criminal proceeding, and would be more of administrative orders to individuals who come and engage in hostile activity in City Hall. Restraining orders are typically directed to an individual, so the situations that have come up since I've been here have been more shouting obscenities and threatening every staff that they come in contact with versus an individual person. So a restraining order to get approved would be directed activity towards a single individual person. We can still pursue restraining orders, but this is slightly different than trying to get an enforced restraining order.
Councilmember Levitt and then the mayor.
Can you hear me? I need to do that? No. I guess, my only question would be, because I think it's a good idea. I think it is a good idea. I mean, I think that the safety is an important thing, especially of our, our team, but, the question is, how does one decide? Is it a vote? Is it, like, who is the committee that decides, like, hey, we're actually gonna enact this? Is it a single person? Did you already say that?
No, you didn't. So the process, and apologies for having us not make the packet. So there's, in section B of it, there's kind of an administrative enforcement standards that show the escalation and the progression. So the first is an official warning, which is if a member of the public violates a policy, a supervisor on duty will issue an oral warning and provide that person with a copy of the policy. So the first is a warning, and it would really be up to the supervisor on duty to decide if an oral warning with handing someone the policy is warranted. I would say for the most part, you know it when you see it. So someone coming and shouting and using obscenities. We've also defined harassment and defined stalking based on the RCW in the policy so that it's pretty clear what the kind of behavior is that we think would violate the policy. So it's not kind of subject to interpretation. It's guided by the RCW.
I'm letting you know that I didn't know.
Thank you.
Baron, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I do want to also share that, there are individuals who've been directed numerous times by their previous city administrators and myself to not contact staff directly and to work directly with me. And that has not been adhered to, and we have not been able to, legally block that email address from contacting our staff, so they receive, written abuse on a regular basis. And we're not talking about once a year for some of these individuals, we're talking several months, sometimes several a day. So it's true harassment. It doesn't necessarily meet the line of, at this point, being able to take legal action against them. And so this is something that's really necessary to protect our staff, but also provide full access to city services as well.
Councilmember Mercer?
And I can't recall if we discussed this during the safety committee or not, but the other, I knew it had come up in terms of discussion. The other question was with regards to the duration of penalty or response. Obviously, things like a warning triggered escalation flow, or some of the other items like bans. I know you were going to sort of revisit, what the duration of that ban would be if they demonstrate, for lack of a better word, good behavior, whether it resets or if they're during a probationary period for a certain period of time. I haven't had a chance to review the email, but is that also covered within the policy?
Yeah, so the kind of progression is an official warning. The second step would be a suspension from the city building. And that's kind of a light touch. It's if a member of the public still does not improve their behavior upon return after kind of being asked to take the equivalent of a timeout, the individual will be asked to leave the premises for the remainder of the day. So it kind of starts with the day, and then you would assess from there whether that temporary suspension would need to be escalated based on another interaction. The final step before you would get to a trespass warning is a cease and desist, which is to send a letter identifying the behavior, telling them this is what's going to happen. Your next step will be a trespass in some amount of increment of time. And I think that increment of time would be dependent on, have you already been suspended? Have you already been asked to leave? How many times have you been issued an oral warning? All of that information would be provided to the chief of police to determine what the length of trespass would be.
Councilmember Levitt?
Yeah, thanks for that, actually really clarifying. To the mayor's point, is there a digital equivalent? So is there something where if there's harassment that's happening online specifically, is there a way to like use IT to block that person? I mean, is there something like a digital ban? I only asked if that was a specific example. I didn't see it in the draft, I just scanned it.
Yeah.
Barely. But I mean, that's something, if that's an arena at which this is happening a lot, it might be worth adding to the
Yeah, so what we have is, in the definition of harassment, words or conduct, which is included in the definition, includes in addition to other forms of communication or conduct, the sending of.
Okay.
So that would also trigger, again, first the warning, then a, hey, if you keep sending emails like this, we're going to have to send a cease and desist, and at that point, probably some version of blacking.
Cool.
I will say, at least based on my experience, when we've had people banned, their emails banned, the next thing that comes up is a Proton email that has, but is very obviously the same person, but, you know, you do what you can.
Any other, go ahead, Councilor Shepherd.
You know, I can see where escalation would be applicable, hopefully, to most of these cases, but I can also see where things may escalate very quickly in a single instance. There may be threatening, not only threatening behavior, but actually verbal threats, things like that, which I think would probably or should probably result in immediate police involvement. Does the policy cover that?
It does not. So the policies around administratively assisting members of the public and engaging professionally with staff. A escalating threat of violence, once we kind of get this structure in place, training staff on what are the things that are appropriate for the policy and what are the things that are appropriate for an immediate 911 call. Chief Duvall has been really clear that the police department will immediately respond to staff feeling threatened. The training part is really, where is that line and how to empower staff to feel like they can call or use a policy. So probably having Chief Duvall help me with that training, like what line is appropriate. And I don't know that we know. I mean, certainly somebody coming in with a weapon that is paired with, you know, threats of violence would be an immediate 911 action. It doesn't mean just walking in with a weapon because we're. So there's, you know, a lot of kind of training that has to go along with when's the right time
Exactly.
to call.
Exactly. So the training will then involve both the policy and then also what to do in a situation that requires, you know, potentially immediate.
Yeah, when does a policy not apply?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So,
Other questions or comments?
one more question. The cases we know about where people come in, behave badly and done that multiple times. As far as we know, will this policy cover the majority of those cases?
I would term him a frequent flyer, so the one frequent flyer we have in City Hall, at least once or twice a month. I think, yes, I think it would potentially correct his behavior. He'll probably have to get through a full progression in order to see that corrected behavior, but I would hope that it would. One of the directors today had some email correspondence, repeated email correspondence that probably meets the definitions of this policy, I would hope as well. I mean, honestly, it isn't that this happens every day, but it happens enough and is scary enough to staff that it was one of the first things they asked me to work on.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we'll be applying the policy kind of every day. You know, I have experience in my former workplace where certain libraries we had to apply it every single day. I don't know that we're gonna see that here.
Okay, good.
Councilman Rice is here.
Okay, last question.
I'm assuming in the conversation with our attorney, city attorney, we ensure that whatever policy we implement doesn't end up in issues of violating the First Amendment rights.
Yes,
Because that, I mean, one person's decision of what I can talk about is another person's interpretation of, could be another person's interpretation of harassment. So, I mean, that's a gray area. I'm assuming the attorney would be strongly involved with making sure we don't, as a city, violate the citizens' First Amendment, and then they sue the city.
yes. So the goal of today was to present this to you, solicit feedback, any comments, edits, questions. I would revise it, send it to the city attorney. We've already had discussions about what needs to be here. One of the things that has to be in this policy, two things actually, in order to be compliant with the First Amendment. The first is you cannot police behavior on city sidewalks or roadways. So one of the questions that came up from staff, one of our frequent flyers, either stands in the middle of the road or stands on the sidewalks and flips off city employees from the sidewalk. We can't police that violate the First Amendment. Similarly, the policy has to have an appeal process. And as written, it has an appeal process. They, you know, to comply with the First Amendment, there has to be an appeal that is grounded in First Amendment laws, like somebody being able to say as part of their appeal, but my speech is protected for these reasons. Ultimately, I think if we were to get a First Amendment appeal, we would want that appeal to go through city attorney review. As opposed to an appeal that says, well, I never got my cease and desist letter, or you didn't mail that to me, or you didn't give me the policy. Those are kind of administrative things, but a First Amendment appeal, we probably want to make sure that that is reviewed by a city attorney.
Other questions, comments? So when would you, so given that some people might need their reading, but it is short, and I appreciate that too, and that's more impactful to have something very concise. Would you want feedback this week, or do you have a time in mind that you like for feedback?
Yeah, ultimately, if we could get this done in the month of January, I think staff would really appreciate that. So maybe in the next 2 weeks, if you could give me comments, so that I can make sure that the city attorney has enough time to review what would look like a final product. And also if you could email me and let me know when you see it, in addition to comments, questions, that kind of thing. It would be helpful to know if kind of fundamentally this is not an area that you want to go. So if you have kind of a philosophical and not interested in this, that would be also helpful to know.
All right, well, thank you very much. Next step, we're going to do our council procedures update again with our city administrator McNabb. And so I just want to make sure, was there, because I see there's not a hot link on this one either, but I feel like I read something that was attached somewhere else, or.
It was, so it
Okay.
was inadvertently attached to the mayor pro tem agenda item, and then I sent it out again at about 11 today, attached to the request log.
Perfect. All right, I'll hand it off to you then. Did you want to?
Sure, and then I might pass it back to you.
Yeah, that's fair.
So as I understand the council procedures document, when I got the draft of it, it looked like it had been through at least 5 to 6 years of attempts to make comments to it, update it, move certain sections in different directions. So it was replete with changes. So we had 2 clerks offer red lines on it, 3 or 4 past and current council members. They'd gone through 2 rounds of city attorney review with a final product provided to me right before the holidays by city attorney Kenny, with kind of final revisions and final thoughts about what needed to be in it, what didn't need to be in it, red lines, comments on the comments. And then from there, he provided some comments to me on things that he didn't want to write for us, but needed kind of some massaging in different paragraphs. So between city attorney Kenny and I, we came up with the final draft, which is what you see emailed to you. So there's a council procedures draft. The prior edition of your council procedures also had a code of ethics as an appendix. City attorney Kenny offered that they should be standalone documents. So I pulled the ethics section out and created 2 separate documents. So what you have is the final version of that process for trying to update the council procedures document. What I would like to do so that we stay compliant with the Open Public Meetings Act is for you all to take a look and provide me kind of similar to disability policy, any comment, feedback, questions. I will include those in a new draft and then send them on to our city attorney with the hope that either the next meeting or the meeting after, we could get a final product that you all could vote and approve. The reason I didn't include, a single red line for everybody then to red line off of is that it gets close to the line of having a de facto meeting. So if you could just all provide me individual comments, I'll receive those and create a document that you all can see with red lines. A lot of work has gone into this, not my work, but a lot of work of, prior council, current council members. And so I'm hoping that, it's a priority for you all to get it done and to kind of get this one done, complete, adopted, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, I would just add before I open it up too, that, yes, it has a long history. I've worked on it with a lot of different council members that are no longer here, and a lot of different staff as well. I think a lot's changed. I want to get it finished, but keeping in mind it's not gonna be perfect and that we should, in my opinion, and I think I put it in here, if I'm trying to remember, it's been quite a while. But to review this annually, not only to see if there's things that aren't working and we need to update, but also to remind us of our own policy, because there, you know, when I first walked into this, I think it was an ad hoc committee, it was called, but I was surprised having my own mindset of like, this isn't working, we should change this. And there were some things that were written differently in the policy that we weren't following at the time. So I think it was a really interesting exercise, but one that everyone on council should do every year, in whatever capacity. Maybe it's, hey, we're gonna have this discussion item on an annual retreat. Doesn't mean we need to go through the entire thing, but maybe some high level things. So just keep that in mind. I think if you have ideas that you want to add, email Cynthia and we'll go from there. Maybe discuss them either at another meeting or possibly the retreat, depending on how that, how much time we may need to devote to that. But I don't know if I call it a labor of love, it was a labor of something, but it was a lot. And I think it'll continue to be that. It needs to evolve, it needs to change with each council that comes in. So I'm totally open to feedback on it as well. So I don't have a lot of ownership feeling on this. I want to make sure it makes sense to everybody. And I also want to acknowledge that when you come in to edit and update a procedure, sometimes you miss those moments where you maybe just need to delete the whole section and start fresh. And former council member Hogan and I had done that on at least one section, where it just wasn't, you couldn't edit it, it just was kind of not right. But we looked at so many other cities, there's a million ways you could do this. What's important is what works for us and what we want to do. And know that just because we update it and change it, doesn't mean that we can't do it again next year or in whatever amount of time. Councilmember Isaacson?
Just a quick glance on it. Thanks for pointing where we find this was on the links that just opened up there. I'm not micromanaging and go back and change a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we get changed and moved. And is there, with Word doc or something like that, a lot of times we delete something, someone deletes the comment as to why or we move somewhere. And so far, what I'm seeing is not here. And I don't think we have a lot of extra staff time trying to figure out the whys. But is there a way to do that somewhat efficiently and not waste time and hold up this? Because some of these things, they seem simple, but, one section of it, go back to this, in years which no this to election sales, election maybe for Tim, her first council, I said deleted. Why? Who made a decision and do we really, all agree with that? And I'll each other rather feedback, was there anyone I can get relevant if I wanted to know why that deleted and I can go to, so I understand the history of it, is it moved somewhere else?
There is a document that has all of the comments that I retained, both from prior council, mayor pro tem, and 2 rounds of city attorney review. Some of them were, I'm happy to share them. I didn't share them in the packet. They're kind of directed to me as a final reviewer or to mayor pro tem. And so where you see deletions, those deletions are typically because City Attorney Kenny said that those sections weren't necessary, but I'd be happy to share the comments.
Yeah, something simple like the mayor pro tem, the new mayor pro tem was elected. In the period from the election to that mayor pro tem, from mayor pro tem, they would be referred to as mayor pro tem elect. It's a semantics thing, but it's deleted, you're kind of like, well, why would that be deleted?
Mayor, I can answer that one. It's a simplified process. So that's a simplification. And when we originally got to these procedures, there was going to be some overlap in between that and how we left the mayor pro tem, but that is continuing. So it's, in that case, it's a real simplification to make it a lot easier for folks to understand and carry out.
Yeah, if there's any question about why something was deleted, I can either share the comment with you or share the draft. It is a very cumbersome draft.
And I would offer, but I should probably do it through you, so we don't, because I've worked on I felt a little weird about, like, I've worked on this with a lot of council members, granted, they're not on council now, but. I want to make sure that we, do it properly, so if you could always ask, I will try, it's been, some of this I worked on 5 years ago. I would say most of the straight up deletions probably came from the attorney, my recollection of our committee work when it was 2 or 3 council members. Was we would have a discussion around something, and most often it wouldn't end with a deletion, but some kind of change. There would be an insert of something else, or maybe some wordsmithing of what we thought captured better our thoughts around it. And I'm not sure we always documented that super well. A lot of the comments that I recall in the draft that pop out to the side were more, hey, we need to ask our attorney about this, or could we do this? Or so they didn't necessarily summarize the discussion the committee had. But I could try and remember. So if there were specific things and you ask our city administrator and she wanted to ask if I remembered anything, I will definitely give it a try. Give you some comments.
Yeah, and there was a real kind of value that City Attorney Kenny brought to the table this round of review, which was it is excessively long. And we need to create a document that's usable, readable, and implementable. So some of the deletions were like areas where it just replicated the RCW. There was a value that he brought to this round of review to make you a document as council that you could actually use.
Councilmember Levitt?
Yeah, on that note, and maybe just as easy as like turn off track changes, but I'm looking at a live version, it would be, for me, advantageous to look at a version with everything deleted gone. Like,
Okay.
what does it look like if it has nothing, if I see no redactions, like, how does it read clean?
Okay.
For me, that's a valuable comparison, maybe in it, rather than trying to dance between the edits. If that's helpful.
Yeah, happy to send that. I wanted to be sure that you all saw the red lines because
Totally,
the red lines are extensive.
totally.
Yeah, I can send you a clean copy.
Yeah, word.
I do. I have like, at this point, probably 5 different.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, some of the ideas I've just seen in other cities that are, and I don't know, I wouldn't wanna assume that if I gave you feedback that it was maybe implemented in part of a draft that everyone could approve. I mean, is that what you're thinking the process, or are you gonna bring forward ideas and then find out if the rest of council will be on board, or do you see where I'm going?
I do. Yeah, so my idea would be to receive feedback. So send a clean document with all of the revisions as they currently have been proposed by either current council, former council, or the attorney, and I will be transparent, some of them are mine. City Attorney Kenny said, okay, Cynthia, I think this sentence or this paragraph needs to be massaged, so I took a stab at doing that. There aren't very many sections like that, but there are a couple. So give you all a clean version that kind of premised on pretending that you accept all the changes. And then I'll create another version of all of the changes that you all provide to me, so you can see what each other wanted to add. And then I guess there will be, which I can help facilitate a structured kind of conversation on which of those proposed changes you all want to include.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
And then this is more about just sort of the process comment. I think one of the things when we were discussing the retreat agenda, obviously some of that is focused on reviewing the new procedures. But I think that's also an opportunity if we want to get the process in place going forward to create a change law or whatnot, so that, once we adopt the new set, then we have sort of a clean baseline to work off of and going forward on an annual basis or whatnot, we can, pair that with a change law that would actually have those specific things that council member Isaacson raised, so that when we do have turnover of council, there's this historical record. I think that's oftentimes cleaner than trying to look at the redlining or the comments, but It obviously will be a new process going forward.
Yeah, and I'm happy to produce a change log. I don't know that I could produce a change log.
Yeah.
Of the thing, the product that was delivered to me when I came had probably at least 10 to 15 people touching it over the last 5 years.
And I think maybe what I'm hearing is going forward, that will be really amazing, and I think there will be different categories of feedback here. There might be new ideas, there might be, why did this change, or what does that really do? Or yeah, just there might be questions, comments, I think I prefer this change, and then, yeah, if you could find a way to consolidate those and maybe at a retreat or a meeting, we just go through each one, get a council consensus, do we like this, do we want this idea? And then, you know, you get to make the magic part and make it all. So yeah, okay, well, was there any other questions or comments on that? Great. I appreciate you helping us get to completion on that. That has been a long time coming. There are some written reports included, as always. You can check out the council planning calendar, and if you have questions, just reach out. I'm wondering, since we have time left, and I know we're on a tight timeline for a council meeting, would you want to, we can maybe take care of if there are any committee reports or other council reports? Yeah? I think the council's okay with that. Is council all right with that? Are there any council committee reports? I imagine maybe not, because, oh, do you have them?
I don't think we had a meeting, the FAC, it was the shortest FAC meeting ever. Remember that?
I do barely.
Yeah.
Do you want to give that report then?
I actually didn't file the minutes yet.
Oh, okay.
I can wait for the next.
Okay.
Fine, yeah.
And I think quite a few of our committees took the month off because a lot of us tend to meet later in the month. Okay, so nothing else on that? Well, that was easy. Are there other council reports? If the council's okay taking care of that, we could cross that one on. I guess I just have more of a heads up that, I think, we have a couple events that happen annually. Let's see, the AWC City Action Days, and Director Thomas sent us an email today about that. I'm really bummed they scheduled that right before all of the because I may not be able to make that, but, and it's, you know, you don't have to go for the whole thing. You don't have to go overnight if you just want to go for the party. I think the email said to email Sherry and she can, get you signed up. It would be nice as council if to figure out who was going and talk to the mayor and figure out other things we should work together as a group and advocate for strongly. I won't lie, when you see a group of like 5, 6 people show up from the city, it sends a pretty strong message when you show up instead of just one person. Trying to think of the other one. The other one's NLC is coming up again in March. I'm thinking about going to that. I don't know if anyone else would want to go. It's in DC. You can look on NLC's website about that, and the mayor might talk about that more. And then the other thing is that June is the AWC, what's it called? The city, it's a annual conference. And I think this year it's in Spokane. That was one of my favorite conferences I went to last year, and it was in Vancouver. You learn a lot, you meet people from every city in Washington, and it's just a lot of fun. And you just, I can't put a number on the things you learn at all the different classes, the people you meet. I think that's about it. I just wanted people to start thinking about that because you get a lot of training and you learn a lot of new things. So, and I know the mayor's been to all that stuff and probably has some others, that I'm missing, but those are the 3 big ones coming up that I thought of. Just to get you looking into it and thinking about it if you want to go, because we do have budget for that kind of stuff, so. That's all I had. Anyone else? All right, go ahead. Are you just talking or do you want to do your mayor's report? Or just whatever, either's fine.
Not much. I'll
Okay.
do a short mayor's report, very short mayor's report for the meeting, but to Mayor Person McHenry's comments on the legislative action conference is coming up next month. This is the best opportunity to get in and meet with our legislators. This year, we really are, well, we're technically represented by the board of the district. We have strong support from both the 12th and the legislative district. So attempting to get 9 meetings on the calendar and get everybody into those meetings and discuss our legislative agenda will be challenging. So the more people we can get down to that conference, the better. We can also schedule another day during the session, but it gets a little harder with committees and development types and things like that. National League of Cities, of course, is fantastic. That is the federal. We do get to meet directly with our senators and our congressional delegation. There's often tons of information coming in from the administration about grants and opportunities for cities. What we're seeing with this current presidential administration is a hyper focus on local government that has never existed before in Congress. And that's a huge benefit to us, especially as we look to site and scope our new city hall and have some major transportation projects we need to move forward. It is critical that we have base time, not just in Washington State, but in DC with these folks. It is a great trip, and you know, you're always welcome to schedule it around your family to Washington DC and other things as well, and get more value out of your trip. But I have to say that both the Association of Washington Cities and National League of Cities are extraordinary organizations, and you will not be wasting your time. In fact, I'll probably come back energized, excited, with tons of ideas, and thinking about how we can move the city forward even faster. So, you know, highly encourage it. Mayor Person and I had a blast in DC in March. The fun part is it was supposed to be normally at that time of the year in the 60s and 70s. We got there and we had a major snowstorm and windstorm. So that happened to be our day before the activity started, and we got to sightsee and freezing cold temperatures. It was a blast. But it's also obviously a great opportunity to get to know your fellow council members on a much more deeper level, which is really beneficial in the relationship. So even if you're not super interested in some of the things, I would actually encourage attendance simply for the relationship building with your fellow council members and those throughout the state. I can't advocate enough for that. I've been doing it a lot. So it's always nice to have folks come and participate. And it shows off our city hall.
It's 6:43. Is there anything else on the council agenda you'd like to do, or do you just want to take a break until 7? Oh, Councilmember Isaacson, did you have a question?
I'm just trying to figure out, where are we in the agenda?
We are taking a few things off the scheduled items on the council meeting. That doesn't start until 7. We're done with our committee of the whole agenda. So we can either adjourn and take a bit of a break until 7, unless there's anything else that we would like to take off. It can't be anything that is voting. I don't know how long the city administrator report is, or if you want to wait until
We can do that now.
do we have time? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is council okay with doing that now, just to check that out?
just so you all know, we have this room till 8:30 and it's 8:30 sharp. So we have to depart at 8:30. 8:25.
Well, yeah, go ahead with this city administrator report. I guess if you can't make it through, then we can always just adjourn and finish it in council.
Yeah, happy to. Let's see. Sharon, can you share it? I want to make sure that I have the right version. I'm talking about the city administrator report. It should be in the presentations perhaps. Yeah. It's not, it's right below the agenda. So that we can see the slide deck. Well, I can do it verbally without seeing the slide deck. Let's see if I have a copy of it from my hard drive. Probably. It's not the most recent one. The most recent one is in the share voucher.
Dana can probably share it. She usually shares. I don't know if she can hear us.
I can share it if you'd like me to. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Well, definitely not be 15 minutes.
Just take one moment here.
There we go. All right, Dana, if you could move the slides forward. It's a regular agenda, community commission updates, so department updates and city hall news, so, next slide. So I didn't have any updates on community committee or commissions, but I did want to point out that the next council meeting, some of the things that we hope to bring to the next council meeting. So the first is we've had meetings with ARC on the facilities, plan that they're producing for us. We gave them a deadline of January 13th to get a document to us. I would like to bring to Cal on the 17th, just a high level look at what that has. I think that will make the council packet. But I do kind of want to, we potentially do a last minute addition. So wanted to give you a heads up that I'm hoping that they'll be ready on the 17th to begin that process of council feedback and review. But it is likely that it won't make the packet. So just a heads up that I want to get it to you, but we'll be a little bit under the wire. And then I have a question for that. So big project, big deliverable. What would the council like to see in terms of a process for reviewing that document and providing input and feedback? Does that include potentially asking the contractor, consultants to come make a presentation? What would you all like to see as part of your review process?
Councilmember Neplin and then Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is this supposed to be somewhat of a final document? I know that built into the process, there was supposed to be, maybe I was misunderstanding, somewhat of an iterative process to get, to get an understanding from council as well on a direction.
So this is the deliverable, the final deliverable we're expecting from. That does not mean that it is the final product. So I think what we could term this as is they're going to deliver a document they intend to be their final analysis. We would go through a council process for asking questions of that document, like, did you get what you wanted? Are there questions that weren't answered? And then we would ask them to finalize as their recommendation to us as a kind of final vote type product. So I would say that this is an interim final.
Okay, so they're like options and recommendations, things like that.
Yeah.
They're coming forward.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, this is a big deal. I know all council members haven't been that involved with this, as much as some of us have been here for a while. But this will essentially set our facilities direction for the next decade or more. So it is a really big deal. As such, I think a special meeting would be warranted on this. Somewhere where, obviously with the AWC, somewhere where we can really focus specifically on this topic.
And then can I ask a question on that? Would that be in a special meeting to make it a meaningful opportunity? Would you like the consultant to have time on that special meeting agenda?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Isaacson.
I was gonna say something similar, for the second, if you're recommending that is. I would definitely like a special meeting, question and back forth with you all, because like reviewing our year's document, it's gonna be like open and be very efficient with something like big. Levels of efficiency can be gained, we sit with that, with the art presentation and ask questions and maybe head off lengthy process on what's this. Why do you think of it? So I would definitely be special. Probably a good couple hours sitting down and asking questions, and I would prefer to try to see the document at least a couple of weeks prior to that sitting.
Okay.
Because it's on me, each council member to have time or not to review it before you step into that meeting. I think that's the most efficient way to do something this big. In my opinion.
Yeah, and certainly I think, and, you know, we can ask Director Lynch if he has more information on this, but, based on the meeting that we had last week, I think the consultant is interested in producing a final report, so the more efficient we can make that, feedback session, the better, because we can get a deliverable from them a little more efficiently, and I think they have an interest in kind of handing off the project as well.
Other questions or comments? I think for me, I'm just thinking procedurally, what does that look like? So if it's like a Q&A session or something similar with the consultant, you know, but they're wanting to give final product. So the meeting would happen after they've sort of handed off this sort of almost final type thing. But I was just trying to understand, you know, people are asking questions or wanting to see changes. We have to have a mechanism to make sure there's council consensus before they just take that, you know what I mean, and change something. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on how we would structure everything.
So my, what I would like to do is bring whatever they're going to, give us to the next council in whatever form, so that you all have an opportunity to see it. And, you know, let's hope that they meet the deadline set for them in January. So starting with, you know, hopefully good intentions that they'll meet that deadline. On the next council meeting, it would probably be the equivalent of a written report. We could put it on PowerPoint for kind of more discussion or kind of initial impressions. But I don't think if that little time, you'll have enough time to really interact with the document. But my idea would be to put it on PowerPoint as a, hey, did you see it? Any initial questions? Then we would probably schedule a special meeting, ask the consultant if they have an opportunity to come and give a presentation on their findings, because I think it would be beneficial if you heard their perspective versus how staff kind of feel about it. 'Cause I mean, I suspect that staff is going to have their own opinions about the recommendations they hire and how feasible those recommendations are. I wasn't here for the prior presentation, but I have been told that some of the art recommendations kind of landed with staff like, well, so we might get some of that too. So I want to offer staff also some time to react and provide council their opinion and feedback as well. And then once we go through a process of having you all have an opportunity to interact with that document, have a discussion about how to make that final, so that we have a firm set of recommendations from them that we can use, you know, for, I mean, this document is going to be used for several purposes, one of which is an appendix to the comp plan. So, and directing city CIP and city activities for the next 5 to 10 years.
Councilmember Isaacson, sorry.
And just to kind of what you're actually very clear, what I would like at that meeting or recommend is rules of engagement for us.
Okay.
Because I don't think we should be directing Park what to do. That means you ask a question, and we as a council will be going back and we'll go through a process of voting and approving it, and we have a process, but I don't think it should be very clear that we have this meeting for what the rules of engagement for us, so that we don't mislead a contractor that this council member we're directing something that should be very clear to them. We're asking questions, not here. This is different information. I don't think it's going to be directed. It is, and we need to understand those rules, so that we don't cross them out.
Well, and we hire them to make recommendations based on their expertise, and with all consultants and contractors, you can decide whether or not you agree with their recommendation. But, you know, you hire them for their expertise. I wasn't here when we hired them, but, you know, they have a good reputation. We want their unfiltered recommendations, but guided more by, did we get what we contracted for? And I think that's part of the rules of engagement that counts, is we expected to see X, we got maybe X minus, how do we get it to X, the thing we asked for? And then wanted to let you know that at the next council meeting, I'll also have the job descriptions for the budgeted positions to present to council. But just a heads up. Next slide, hopefully we can finish in the next few minutes. So for community development, our update, so we have the senior planner position. That application deadline was today. We have 4 applicants and the interviews will occur at the end of the month. We've issued 581 permits, 81 residential permits in 2022 and completed 2,400 plus inspections. So the planning and public works departments are working jointly on the RFPs for the 2024 comprehensive plan, transportation plan, and parks, trails, and open space plan. Those RFPs are going to be issued by the end of the month. Next council meeting, we will be bringing some information to council to discuss the economic development element of the comprehensive plan. There are a couple different directions we can go. We're going to bring some cost estimates because each of the directions has both time impacts and cost impacts. And so we'll be bringing that to the next council meeting to discuss prior to issuance of the RFPs, what we want to put in the RFP for the economic development element of the comp plan. And then from our community development department, yearly fire inspections are picking up post-pandemic. So we're seeing some growth. For public works, we submitted for and sought final reimbursement for our COVID supplies through FEMA. We're hoping to get back $17,000 and change. This revenue isn't budgeted, so if we get it back, that'll be good news. The wastewater treatment plant contract, that contract is coming next council meeting. It will include the construction management contract as well as parametric support for the project. In your council packet tonight, you have the plan update, the written report for your review, but the contract comes next meeting. Our new city assistant city engineer starts next week. The Osprey nest, which Director Leschewski showed me as he was driving me around the city, that project to remove the nest and put up bird deterrence is happening right away. And we got, I'm not sure you all know that PSC is donating the new pole for us. We will be bringing to an upcoming meeting discussion of Big Rock Park, the adjacent property research findings to guide future expansion projects. Also, that conversation should guide our ability or interest in seeking a grant for Big Rock Park for additional land acquisition. We are investigating a water leak at 3rd and 143rd. So we know that there's a leak there. And we'll be doing work to remediate that this week. Public Works is ordering their F-550 replacement vehicle. It has to be purchased or at least ordered by Friday. It's a budgeted position. If we delay past Friday through the government procurement process or the state procurement process, we will not potentially get that until 2024. This vehicle is a replacement vehicle. It also is outfitted for snowplow. Sewer biosolids contract will be posted this Thursday. Staff is proposing a 3-year term for that. Reading the Seattle Times and Daily Journal. And then flooring installation in the visitor center is nearly complete, which means we will be in the process in February of opening that building up for rental.
All right.
Last slide.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll be okay. And hopefully, we'll get this sent to you. I'll be happy to send this so you can all take a look at it. Because the last slide has quite a bit of information. So update on the IT services contract, our interim services that we have right now through February of the essential short-term projects that were identified to be completed in December of 2022. All were done and completed in the month. So we're pleased with that. The RFP for IT management services for the future was posted in the Daily Journal of Commerce and Seattle Times this week, and responses are due on the 23rd. The economic development survey that Councilmember Schaefer sent out was delivered to businesses today. 400 businesses received that survey, both brick and mortar and home occupation businesses. We had 16 undeliverable bounce back, but that's a lot of businesses that we sent the economic survey to. Just request or feedback on the council information request logs that I've been sending. If you have any changes or feedback that you would like me to incorporate. And then finally, I'm working on a dashboard that I will use as part of the updated council meetings. So I put here, and I'll send the slide deck out, ideas for metrics or key performance indicators. I took them from the retreat notes as kind of the foundation for building out a dashboard. So some of the things that I kind of took from the council notes would be measuring staff response time to council, staff meeting project milestones, communicating project milestones at meetings and providing frequent updates. The tracking mechanism for the budget reflecting council goals, percentage of agenda bills pulled from consent. That gets to a retreat. Note that our agenda bills should be explanatory and complete so that you all have enough information to vote. Percentage of policies, ordinances, and procedures adopted by council. Consistent, frequent communication, so looking at social media activity, potential community satisfaction, feedback on communication tools, some council specific, like so number of meetings, meeting forums, percent of vacant positions filled, meetings with communities, and then staff satisfaction metrics. So number of open positions, time to hire, retention rates. So my hope would be to create a template dashboard in the next month or so, and then launch it for you all this week, and then iterate from it. And that's what I have. If there's any questions.
Really quick, do you want me to adjourn and pick this back up, or do you want to just finish?
I think we have just one quick question. Okay. Go ahead and see it.
Okay, good, Councilmember Tyson.
And I can share. KPI is really set kind of like from an efficiency perspective, staff. And those things pull off their primary duties a lot back and for maybe the question I asked, I think want to get my question answered politely, so that we're all seeing together, neighbors, citizens together. Is there any way to track that so we can hold ourselves accountable for the extra work on that necessarily, or we do read something instead of.
Yes, so on the request log, I was trying to just figure out if the tool worked. For as a communication tool. Probably starting this month, as I learn more about how the requests come in, how they're responded to, I'm gonna start identifying kind of the bottom, like the time it took an approximation for staff to respond to the request. Just so you all have an idea of how much time goes into preparing for council meetings. You know, Tuesdays are busy, and a lot of our work is council work on Tuesdays, and that's not just me, that's my entire team.
All right, so we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:04, take a 3-minute quick break, and be back for the council meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, cool.
I don't mind from a long time ago. You want the
Oh.
Can you please unmute? Thank you.
We'll try that again. Mayor Overmeyer.
Here.
Councilmember Isaacson.
Present.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem McHenry.
Here.
Councilmember Mercer.
Here.
Councilmember Supple. Is muted.
Councilmember Supple.
We'll come back to him. Councilmember
Yeah,
Mercer.
I'm having trouble finding my unmute button. Okay, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Naplan.
Here.
Councilmember Lovett.
Here.
We have a quorum. Under additions and corrections to the agenda, we went through council committee reports and other council reports, as well as the city administrator report during the committee of the whole, so we'll remove those. Are there any other additions to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting this evening's council agenda, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please, oh, thank you, Councilmember. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. We do not have any members of the audience in person. Clerk James, did we receive any email comments, or do we have anyone on the line?
No, we do not.
Great, thank you. Moving on, do we have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Moving on to scheduled items, the only thing left we have is, I just had a brief addition for the mayor's report. I just wanted to thank our public works department and our police department. Over the last few weeks, they've had some extraordinarily challenging weather and public safety conditions with the snow, the rain, the ice, the wind, you name it. And our crews really do everything they can to keep our community safe and keep our roads clean. And I wanted to have a big shout out to them that even past our last council meeting, it was, I think, about 3 weeks straight of constant weather issues that kept them off their game from the day-to-day activities that they normally do. So to thank Director Lemashevsky and Chief Duvall and all of your team for everything you do to keep us running during those weather events. So thank you very much. Moving on to new business, Agenda Bill 23-04, 2023-2024, Mayor for temporary temp appointment for discussion and decision. Just a quick premise, and the city administrator may want to add in, we're at this point now of having 2-year terms, but we still have some technicalities to work through. So we do, I believe, need to take, council needs to take another vote this evening. Mayor Pro Tem McHenry has been serving very, very well in the position for the last year. And I'll turn it over to the city administrator.
Yes, so we took a look at the appointment of Mayor Pro Tem McHenry, and then the change to the council rules that now have Mayor Pro Tem serving for 2 years. And the appointment and the change in the rules kind of happened at divergent times, so we have to do another appointment for another year to kind of put us then on the 2-year track. So it was more of a function of timing than anything else.
Would council like to make, what we'll do is nominations for council of your next Mayor Pro Tem. And once everyone's had their opportunity to make a nomination, we'll close and take a vote. Councilmember Schaefer.
I'd like to nominate Amy Kent, Mayor Pro Tem.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, is there any discussion? Other than Mayor Pro Tem McHenry has been an absolute rock star this last year. She's managed a lot and really folded into administration very well. So I know personally, I'm pleased, very, very pleased to see her continue on another year and serving you and serving the administration as well. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Congratulations. Moving on to agenda bill 23-05, settlement fair final plat for discussion and decision. Director Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, Steve Laniszewski, Public Works. I think that's all. A little not normal setup, so we're gonna see how this works. So in your, while we look to get a couple slides up, in your packet is what's called a final plat. I know we have some new folks here, and I don't want to assume everybody knows what's happening. So there is a land development process. So you go through your preliminary phase, preliminary plat, you go make all your pictures on paper, they're neat, approximate to the best of their abilities. Then they get that approved through a big process with their hearings examiner, and then you get into engineering documentation and design. That goes through more process for review and approval, and then they go into the construction phase. They build what they are supposed to build in the construction phase, and then they get to the final plat phase, which is checking all the boxes from beginning to end. So our code directs us on what we are and are not to review and approve and or provide for, so. Oh, sorry, guys. You guys have it on your screen. So this is the plat off of First, right above to the east of Copperhill Square. It's 16 units. It does connect to the south on the River Ridge plat. So there is connectivity through the bottom of your screen connects to 145th. There's water loop through there. Sewer is supplied and provided and travels downhill gravity to First Avenue, tied into a gravity system. You may be aware it's a steep site. A lot of the roads and how the plats are laid out overall, grading wise, is dictated by our road standards. So our road standards kind of set the stage for how everything else is graded around it. Other constraints, these are kind of the last remaining lots around town that are infill subdivision. So everything around them is bookended and they're building kind of those edges. So most of their site is fixed. This site had a few trees that remained on site, fairly large. We have arborist consultant services who goes through the entire development review process with us. As you would imagine, we did receive some questions today. There are a lot of changes that did occur for grading on this site because of its steepness. And when you do the preliminary plat and engineering phase, you know, they do their best. That was perfect. So there are some review and approvals that happen after the fact of preliminary plat and engineering documentation prior to final plat, and everything is wrapped up and caught into the final plat as-built, as we call them. So the final plat document, which is the horizontal control for the subdivision and the lands that are divided. And then there's a vertical component, which is as-built materials that is normally just for staff and the record keeping for the city of everything has been built, as well as the utilities. So simple layout of the plat, difficulty in grading and trees. We are, of course, it's a public roadway, so we are obligated to, manage the roadway infrastructure, the sewer and the storm and the water in the street. This is an LID BMP, so low impact design best management practice little subdivision. So they have individual lot stormwater controls on their premise. It's great, but it's not. So that then lies what we will be inspecting on an annual basis. And you can imagine what people do to their backyards and may or may not get a permit and may or may not remove things. So we will have an annual inspection process, which is why we have an engineer coming on board, which is why we have the stormwater program coordinator, which kind of fell off because of recruiting and a lot of documentation to go and complete annually on the city's behalf as well as each lot. So they are at a point where they're ready for physical horizontal control, vertical components are mostly installed. They had to change some things around because of ADA and slopes adjacent to some of those common areas. So they are in the process of moving some of those now. Those are all private lots and all private play areas for the subdivision. So that's not a public component. The building official talked to them about sealing that off with fencing today, I think, because they did some stuff and then they kind of went away when the weather hit and they haven't been back. We reached out to both of our contacts and we haven't heard anything. They're very responsive in paying their bill and bringing their bonds in. So with that said, we are at the point of approving their final plat for some recommendations.
So these components, site grading significantly complete, grading constraints I mentioned. Some access limitations to the play areas and the pathways are being adjusted, and then railing and those pedestrian controls are pending installation, and they are all bonded for. There you go. The only thing left in the public right of way to do is the final lift of asphalt. So if you do or don't notice, we're down about 2 inches. So our code says you have to finish 80% of your subdivision, because the most damage that happens on roads in a subdivision isn't necessarily from excavators, which you can when they're building a lot, but trucks tend to degrade the subgrade, which is why we want to see the subgrade fail before they put a final subgrade. Which is why we want 80% build out, because most of the heavy trucks are gone. And any failure point is going to be a failure point that you'll see usually halfway through. So as we inherit the road. Questions, comments?
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify, I think I know the answer to you, but to make sure. This is so in single family residential, correct? And 4 per acre, is that right?
I want to say 6. R6. It's in that zone because it's Copper Hill to the west.
All I did was divide the number of homes by the number of acres, so.
What'd you guess?
Yeah, about 4. So, okay, no, good, thank you. That was my only questions.
It is in the staff.
Councilmember Napoli.
I did submit a question today, and it looks like it mostly got answered during your presentation. I'm not sure, I saw railing, is there fencing at the top of those very high rock walls, and is there areas for safety?
Yeah, one of the questions that came from you, there's color coding, and I don't do departures, so some of the planning, our planning code puts wall heights and fence heights commensurate with each other. So there were departures requested for that, so those are forthcoming to construct during the home construction.
Okay, because the wall that got constructed, it looks like all the slope got pushed onto that open space. And so there's an awful lot of grade changes, and the wall is actually on the open space, not on the homeowner lot. And so I was just wondering, will there be fencing on that open space? Because there is an extremely steep slope, both the landscaping and then the drop off on a big rock wall. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was midway in your question.
Yeah, and then there looks like there's another wall that I don't think was even shown in the document. The wall extended quite a bit further, and then there was another wall, a smaller walk wall, not the giant boulder wall that got added that wasn't shown in the plan. And so anyway, I
Yep, so
just know when little toddlers are running around, if I was a mom up there, and keep tracking my kids, boy, if one got out of my view and rolled down that slope off those walls, that would be concerning.
yep, so there's 2 play areas, right? One is in the far northeast corner, and they're not done constructing the slide and the slope there. And then the other one is more central on the south edge, right? So walls that are built that require the fall protection 30 inches will have a fence.
Okay,
It's 30 inches.
30 inches, okay, so they'll all have, they will all need, will it be like those, like what got installed at Tool Brothers, which is, you know, that
Yeah, pretty much. Just
coated?
as they're stepping down from the top to the bottom, all of the rockeries on the north edge. You go back 2 clicks. Sure, sorry.
And the property is on 4.5.
4.5, it's in the middle. It's a real fun one. I don't think there's many more. So that one's fine. It's slow. Okay, that works. Yeah, so the top of your screen is the north line. Every lot has a retaining wall because you're coming from a high point in the far right screen downhill to First Avenue. So every lot is flat for the wall, flat for the wall, flat for the wall, flat for the wall. And then the south side is even further complicated with First Avenue and the road, and then some flatter lots coming off the track roads. So yes, there's a lot of walls in here. And they will have fences when they are fall protected required.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Infill subdivisions are really difficult.
Yeah.
They don't turn out fantastic and, you know, they're last. Why they're last.
Councilmember Seville, I just want to give you an opportunity since you are online. Did you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the plan?
I move to approve agenda bill 23-5, approving the resolution for the Summerville Bridge final plat.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve agenda bill 23-05. Any further discussion?
Just for folks' edification too, the building department, so planning, engineering and building is very involved at this stage of it too. So there's a lot of construction activities with walls and private property. So Brian is involved.
Thank you. All right, then, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes unanimously, and with that, unless there are objections, we are adjourned.
Yeah.